huge Great Pyramids in Antarctica. They jut out of the ice and snow, and they look perfect, just like those in Egypt.
Have you ever imagined what lies beneath the white silence of Antarctica? If you haven't, here's a vivid picture for you. From above, it's endless and still. A continent smothered by ice thicker than the world's tallest skyscrapers. But underneath, scientists now believe that something is stirring. Lakes sealed away for millions of years pulse in the dark. Rivers slide beneath the ice, hidden highways of water moving where no human eye has ever looked. And what's even more fascinating? In those secret places, there's a possibility that life may still endure. With artificial intelligence working to change how we see Antarctica, scanning satellite data for the faintest tremor of movement, and even reconstructing its past with unimaginable detail, it's very possible that this continent might not be what we imagined. Let's get into it. Antarctica's lost green past. If we could strip away the ice and peel it back layer by layer, Antarctica would surprise us. And it's not hard to see why. For many centuries, the continent has remained covered in thick layers of ice that make it a little difficult to imagine what's underneath, or even if there was ever anything there to begin with. But what if we told you there's more to the ice than meets the eye? What if we told you that Antarctica holds fractures of memories, a buried record of a world we can hardly picture today? Because the truth is, long before Antarctica became the coldest place on Earth, it was alive. It all dates back to about 90 million years ago, when dinosaurs still walked the face of the Earth. At the time, Antarctica sat further north, and the planet's climate was radically warmer. Naturally, thick forests covered the land. Think of it as the kind of tangled, humid greenery you'd expect in the Amazon rather than at the bottom of the Earth. A little hard to imagine, isn't it? Well, we've got science and fossilized pollen grains as proof that this time once existed. These grains, discovered in deep ice cores, revealed plant families that could only have thrived in warm, swampy conditions. In fact, in some places, the frozen soil has even given up fragments of roots and wood, all of which remain frozen in time-like whispers of a forgotten jungle. Just take a second to imagine it. A continent drenched in green, rivers carving through valleys, massive reptiles lumbering through undergrowth, where today there is only silence. Scientists believe temperatures then could have reached around 12 degrees Celsius. In Antarctica terms, that's pretty much a tropical heat wave. It's balmy enough for rain to fall, not snow. And most importantly, it definitely wasn't the icy wasteland that many think it is now. In fact, it was a kingdom of life. But if there's one thing that remains constant in life, it's change. Nothing on Earth ever stays still. And over millions of years, the continent drifted further south. Ocean currents shifted, carbon dioxide levels dropped, and then, about 34 million years ago, a planetary switch flipped. Gone was the warm greenhouse climate, and in its place came what geologists call the icehouse Earth. Ice sheets surged across Antarctica, choking the forests, burying the rivers, sealing away the ecosystems that had flourished there for millennia. And the life that lived there? In the twinkle of an eye, they all vanished. Just like that, what was once a green haven turned into an endless icy wasteland. And as the decades rolled by, we began to forget the continent's past. But luckily for us, some traces like plant fossils, ancient penguins the size of men, and even marine reptiles remain trapped in rocks and soil, reminding us of that past. And now, with help from AI, there's a deeper possibility that not everything died. Insane, isn't it? But it's true. There just might be a chance that when Antarctica froze, some of its life simply moved underground into the dark, liquid sanctuaries that ice could not reach. It is here that scientists are now searching, with AI as their guide, for the survivors of a world long thought lost. Because if forests once thrived here, what could possibly remain alive now, under the ice? The hidden present. On the topic of liquid sanctuaries, let's look into Lake Vostok, an isolated body of water that lies beneath 4 kilometers of ice in perfect darkness and crushing pressure. For at least 15 million years, this lake has been sealed away, untouched by the surface world. It hasn't seen sunlight, fresh air, or even outside contact. So, how do we even know it exists? Back in the 1970s, Russian scientists identified the lake using seismic and then satellite-based radar. And finally, in 2012, they drilled into the ice above it to unearth its hidden mysteries. What they found shocked the whole world. The first mystery to be unearthed were fragments of microbial DNA, and in a place as closed off as under the Antarctic ice, this was a fascinating discovery. Why? Well, it gave validity to the theories of Antarctica being a green powerhouse millions of years ago. It also meant that life may have survived in this prison of ice for millions of years. But even though many doubted the results of the tests, the truth is, Lake Vostok is not alone. Radar surveys have revealed more than 400 subglacial lakes across the continent, linked by rivers that flow like hidden arteries beneath the ice. They are warm enough to stay liquid thanks to heat rising from the earth below and the pressure of the ice above. And even more fascinating, these lakes are not stagnant. Some fill and drain like beating hearts, their water moving beneath the frozen crust in cycles that last years or decades. And one thing we know about water is that wherever it is, life often finds a way. Similarly, beneath the Willan's ice stream, a moving belt of ice in the West Antarctic ice sheet, scientists drilled into a buried lake and drew up samples alive with microbes. This time around, though, they weren't fossils or remnants, but living organisms metabolizing in the dark, feeding on ancient minerals and chemical reactions. Even under the floating ice shelves that extend over the Southern Ocean, the surprises continue. In 2021, a British team drilled almost a kilometer through the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf and lowered a camera into the blackness. What it revealed stunned them. Sponges and other filter-feeding animals clinging to a rock on the seabed, 206 kilometers from the nearest source of sunlight. In a place where no one expected life, it was thriving. It truly was remarkable. How could life endure in one of the most extreme places on Earth? Well, according to some theorists, this may be possible because it's their natural habitat. And millions of years ago, these organisms were living alongside humans. Lost civilizations beneath the ice. It's an impossible thought, but truly, it's not completely crazy. Think of it this way. Imagine a land you think you know. It's empty, frozen, and a place where nothing moves except the wind and the snow. And yet, some people promise that it wasn't always like this. That long before the ice swallowed it, Antarctica may have been something else entirely. A cradle of life, maybe even of civilization. It's like thinking you know all there is about a person and then finding out they have more layers than Shrek and his onions. Incredible, and definitely not as impossible as it sounds. Anyway, whispers of a lost civilization began with an old sailor's map. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis drew a chart of the known world. Parts of South America curve along its edges. But some believe the map shows something more. The outline of a landmass strikingly similar to Antarctica. And this was centuries before explorers even set eyes on it. Stranger still, the map seems to show a coastline free of ice. How could anyone in the 16th century know such a thing? Although some skeptics argue it's a mistake, a distortion of South America. But to those who dream bigger, it's a clue, maybe even a hint that someone, long ago, saw Antarctica before the ice. From there, the theories deepen. Some writers suggest that buried beneath the ice are the remains of a civilization so old that history forgot it. A people who thrived in the temperate Antarctica we talked about earlier. They built cities, raised temples, and left behind secrets of knowledge that later myths would remember as Atlantis. Shocking, isn't it? But we're not about to peel back the layers surrounding Plato's lost city. The idea that Atlantis might lie buried beneath Antarctica's ice took off in the 90s, fueled by pseudo-archaeological writers. Such theories lean on unconventional interpretations of pole shifts and crustal displacement. They also propose that Antarctica was once warm enough to host an advanced civilization, at least until a dramatic shift in the Earth's surface sealed it beneath the ice. Perhaps when the climate shifted, or a cataclysm struck, the ice came down like a curtain and sealed their world away. It sounds like fantasy, but you might find it surprising to note that the continent itself helps fuel the idea. Because beneath miles of ice, scientists have also found the outlines of mountains, valleys, even lakes that have been hidden for millions of years. The thought of what else might be under there, anything that isn't simply stone or water, makes the mind race. And this is where the shapes come in. What are the shapes, you ask? Well, satellite images of Antarctica sometimes show strange geometric ridges. And just a few years ago, a pyramid-shaped peak caught global attention. Experts quickly explained it as a natural mountain, a nunatak poking through the ice. But still, the image spread across the internet. To believers, it looked too perfect, too sharp, almost like the tip of a forgotten monument. While we still don't know what it is for sure, it's clear as day that our fascination with Antarctica isn't only about what could be buried underneath. It's also about what such a discovery would mean. Think of it for a second. If a civilization did exist there, what chain reactions would it cause? It would change everything we think we know about human history. It would mean that people built and thrived in places we thought impossible. At times, we thought unimaginable. It would blur the line between myth and reality, between the legends of Plato's Atlantis and the stories etched in our maps and memories. Of course, no ruins have been found. There aren't any tools, carvings, or any tangible proof. In fact, if we go by what science tells us, it's that Antarctica has pretty much been frozen for millions of years, long before humans ever walked the Earth. Still, the allure surrounding Antarctica's underside remains. Truth is, the continent is too vast, too unexplored for people to stop wondering. And the ice? It's simply too good at hiding secrets. That's why, even now, stories keep resurfacing. From Hapgood's shifting crust theory in the 20th century to modern authors like Graham Hancock, the idea lingers that maybe, just maybe, our story as humans is older and stranger than we've been taught. Maybe the legends of a golden age lost to catastrophe are not entirely inventions, but memories, distorted and distant, of something real. And what makes Antarctica the perfect stage for such possibilities? Well, simply put, it's a place so remote that even today, we have only glimpsed small parts of it. A continent larger than Europe, sealed under ice more than a mile thick. Entire mountain ranges lie hidden there, unknown for most of human history. If a lost world were to survive anywhere, why not here, in this vast frozen vault? And so, we keep imagining. Today, we glance at the white desert, and instead of emptiness, we see buried columns, forgotten cities, and what might very well be the last trace of Atlantis, frozen in time. Still, we await evidence, something we can fall back on and present as certainty. And once again, I might be just what we need to save the day. How AI is revealing the hidden world. Ever heard that the ancient trees of Antarctica exist only in fossils, the lakes only in charts, and the currents only in mysterious models. Now, though, things are changing, because a new kind of explorer is joining the field, one made of algorithms and sensors, rather than snow boots and pickaxes. It's the age of AI-assisted discovery, a time where machines help us see what human eyes cannot. And when it comes to Antarctica, scientists for sure need their guesses turned into data, and the old maps of ice, water, and life redrawn. Imagine drilling through nearly a kilometer of ice. It's cold, grueling, and blunt work. Scientists from the British Antarctic Survey did exactly that under the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf. Their mission was simple: to pull up sediment, take cores, measure what lies beneath. Instead, they encountered a rock, a boulder wedged deep under the shelf, in almost total darkness, underwater, at about -2.2 degrees Celsius. Suspended cameras revealed that this boulder was not barren. Instead, it was alive, covered in sponges, possibly tube worms or barnacle-like organisms, creatures that filter particles from the water. Far further under the ice than scientists expected for sessile, stationary life. This was one of those rare, accidental moments where nature throws you a twist, and it forces you to rethink what you thought impossible. That discovery is vivid, dramatic, but it leaves questions. How many boulders like this exist? Are there whole swaths of life we cannot see because the ice hides the view? To answer these, researchers are using computer vision, teaching machines to look at seafloor images from cameras tethered behind vessels, or ROVs, or towed camera systems, and to pick out life forms automatically. A recent cutting-edge study from the Weddell Sea introduced a public dataset of high-resolution imagery of benthic seafloor communities. Using deep learning and object detection models, this research can now identify and classify medium and larger organisms, sponges, corals, anemones, with far greater speed than human scanning of footage. Keep in mind that the models are still imperfect. Small or rare organisms remain difficult to catch, but the groundwork is here. This AI vision work does more than just count what's there. It allows scientists to monitor changes over time, to spot where life is thriving or being lost, say, after ice shelf collapse, and to prioritize expedition targets. And when you're dealing with maps of ice and ocean that cover millions of square kilometers, every pixel that an algorithm can sift through, and every organism it can flag sends you closer to knowing what's really under the ice. Life depends on water, but under ice, water is hidden. In lakes sealed off by kilometers of frozen crust, in thin layers under ice shelves, in rivers flowing unseen toward the ocean. AI and machine learning help here too, by combining data from satellites, radar, ice-penetrating sounders, geophysical measurements, and thermal modeling. Through pattern detection, anomalies in ice thickness, subtle motion of ice, or heat flux from below, models can suggest where water is more likely to exist. These AI-enhanced models are changing the expedition maps. Places once thought too extreme are now plausible targets. For example, the ice flow beneath parts of the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf shows complex behaviors. Basal melting, inflows of warmer water, and high salinity shelf water currents that warm certain zones slightly. These factors shift where water pockets and potential ecosystems could exist. There are also places where life is so hidden we can't see it, even with cameras. Sealed lakes, ocean cavities, under thick ice. But life leaves traces. Tiny fragments of DNA float in water, carried by currents, or preserved in sediments. When scientists gather water or sediment cores, they collect this environmental DNA, or eDNA. Then AI and statistical machine learning tools come into play, comparing genetic fragments to databases, identifying similarities or surprising differences, estimating how many species might be present, even if they are completely unknown to science. Though data is sparse, eDNA studies have already suggested microbial communities in isolated water under ice, perhaps tied to the same sources of nutrients that support the sponges and animals on that Filchner-Ronay boulder. As tools improve, scientists expect more robust, trustworthy eDNA maps of Antarctica's hidden biosphere. Still, machines are not magic. Sometimes they misclassify, overpredict, miss hidden tiny creatures, or even mistake debris or ice crystals for life. Remote cameras may get blurred, telemetry may drop, and samples may be contaminated. AI models trained in one part of the ocean often struggle when taken to another. Small, rare species remain underrepresented. All of this means that discoveries must be checked again. It's why video imagery is often reviewed by human experts. DNA findings are validated. Predictions are tested through fieldwork. One recent dataset, for example, achieved strong detection of medium and large organisms in towed camera imagery, but the smaller, rarer taxa remained weakly detected. That limitation matters, because rarer organisms may be especially vulnerable and may represent unique evolutionary paths. Each of these discoveries chips away at our assumptions. Antarctica is not sterile. It is a labyrinth of hidden ecosystems, some cut off for millions of years, others still connected to the sea in mysterious ways. For every borehole drilled, for every camera lowered into the dark, new questions emerge. How widespread is this life? How has it adapted? And most of all, what else lies beneath the ice, waiting to be seen? What these revelations give us? The answer to that is a lot. Because of AI, our map of Antarctica's hidden life is changing. What we thought was dead or nearly lifeless turns out to harbor pockets of thriving life. That Filchner Run boulder, the communities revealed after a giant iceberg broke off, the new ability to scan seafloor images by the thousands, not manually crawling through footage. All these mean our sense of the hidden biosphere is becoming more vivid, more textured, more real. We may never explore every hidden lake or every seafloor canyon, but AI gives us eyes where there are none, hypotheses where there were guesses, priority where there was uncertainty. It bridges the impossible gaps: darkness, distance, danger. And, in a way, it kind of soothes the conspiracy theories and whispers that have long haunted the icy plains of Antarctica. Conspiracies and secrets. Whispers beneath the ice. There's something electric in mysteries, especially when they lurk under ice and vanish behind official stories. Antarctica, thanks to its remote and opaque personality, has always been a magnet for whispers. Because when you can't see, you start imagining. And when governments explore with fleets of ships, when maps show strange lines, when a soldier returns from the ice saying things that don't fully make sense, that's when conspiracy begins. One of the biggest names in Antarctic myth is Operation High Jump from 1946 to 47. It was a huge U.S. Navy expedition, thousands of men, dozens of ships and aircraft, trading zones of white cold for terrain no one knew well. On paper, it was about training and mapping, and maybe testing cold weather gear. But because it was so massive, because so much of its findings weren't clearly explained, stories grew. Maybe the real mission was to find underground Nazi bases or alien craft stored in secret shelters under the ice. Some people even believe Admiral Byrd came face to face with advanced technology, saw things he couldn't explain, things that had to be hidden. Then there are maps and forbidden zones, old expedition logs, sketchy cartographers, vague topographic surveys. All of them mix with legends about places on maps that are blank, places where the ice is thick, where no survey has ever gone. Some believe those blank regions conceal more than cold rock, maybe hidden valleys, maybe even the remains of shelter, of life, of structures. Mapmakers sometimes drew edges, unnamed plateaus, strange ridges. The less we know, the more fertile our stories become. And of course, there are the images, satellite photos, Google Earth snapshots, people seeing pyramids. There's a peak in the Ellsworth Mountains, for instance, that looks eerily like a pyramid when seen from certain angles. Internet threads lit up when that photo showed a sharp, symmetrical shape. Some said it must be man-made, or alien, or lost architecture. Scientists responded gently, yes, it's a mountain. Yes, its shape is created by erosion, ice flow, freezing and thawing cycles. Nothing mystical. But that didn't stop the idea. Here's the thing. Conspiracies often thrive in the gaps. So when someone sees a pyramid-like shadow, or reads about a map that doesn't fully match today's ice cover, or when historical records don't explain everything, they fill in missing pieces with what if. What if Antarctica once hosted something we haven't discovered yet? What if we were misled about how old the ice sheet is, or how untouched it truly is? What if someone found something but kept it secret? We don't have proof. We have fragments, images, rumors, maps, expedition reports with missing pages, and statements that sound strange. We also have reason to be skeptical, because nature is full of tricks, mountains shaped by glaciers, peaks that seem geometric by accident, shadows that deceive. And because Antarctica's environment is so extreme that even small anomalies become huge in our imagination. But maybe that's part of the draw. The cold, the white, the abandoned laboratories, the long shadows. It all feels like there should be something, not just ice, not just stone, something buried under those layers. And whether or not the stories are true, they remind us why we explore. They remind us that curiosity always moves us a little forward, even when the truth is still hidden. Still, curiosity leaves room for unanswered questions, and these in turn come with their implications. Implications and unanswered questions. When that giant iceberg A84 fractured from the George VI ice shelf, researchers weren't planning to rewrite biology textbooks. But what they found when the seafloor was suddenly exposed was jaw-dropping. Thick corals, cages of sponges, octopuses, ice fish, sea spiders, and entire ecosystems that had been hidden beneath floating ice for who knows how long. There was no sense of decay. It was a moment that spoke to a deeper truth. Antarctica isn't dead, even if it looks lifeless. These discoveries hint that wherever ice retreats, whether by natural breakup or warming seas, life will not only return, some of it has already been there, surviving, adapting. So while we were told and made to believe that Antarctica has and will always remain a solid mass of ice, science has pretty much shown that this isn't the case. If it was once a Greenland and new tech supports this idea, does this mean it could one day return to its former glory? It's certainly not impossible. But with Antarctica's current state, this might be highly unlikely in the foreseeable future. Still, it's an idea to consider. What happens if all the ice melts and trees start to grow? Well, let's just say it could be catastrophic. Right now, the icy plains play a huge role in the global climate. If it were suddenly gone, the entire balance of Earth's systems would shift. The white surface of Antarctica reflects massive amounts of solar radiation back into space, a protective shield that helps keep the planet cool. Strip that away, and the dark rock and soil underneath would absorb the sun's heat instead, driving temperatures even higher. And that's only the beginning. The sheer volume of ice sitting on Antarctica is almost impossible to grasp. If it melted, sea levels would rise by more than 50 meters, enough to drown entire coastlines, swallow cities, and redraw the map of the world. Rivers, deltas, and fertile farmlands would vanish. Nations would collapse under the weight of mass displacement, and billions of people would be forced inland. At first, it might seem like a return to some lost world, Antarctica reborn as a green continent. Forests could stretch across valleys, grasslands might rise where glaciers once stood, and animals from the north could make their way down. But this vision comes with a cost. It certainly wouldn't be Eden. It would be a world rebuilt on ruin, because the forests that might eventually grow would never replace the cities, cultures, and ecosystems destroyed elsewhere by the flood. So when people dream about a green Antarctica, it's worth remembering. The continent already sustains life in its own way. Beneath the glaciers are lakes, rivers, and microbial worlds that have survived for millions of years. They may not be forests or jungles, but they are no less miraculous. Perhaps the challenge isn't to imagine what Antarctica could become if the ice vanishes, but to appreciate the mysteries it hides while the ice is still here. Why these hidden ecologies matter? Because these hidden ecosystems are not just curiosities. They carry weight for how we understand Earth, climate, and even life beyond Earth. The first lesson is about survival. The species surviving under ice shelves or in subglacial lakes are doing so in extreme conditions: cold, darkness, high pressure, low nutrient input. Their metabolic tricks, their adaptation strategies, these are blueprints for life at the edge. They tell us not just how life persists, but how it thrives in marginal places. Second lesson: climate history and prediction. The way Antarctica's ice flows, melts, shifts, and calves affects global sea level. But if there's water hidden under ice, or life responding to exposure, then our models need to factor those in. The movement of ice, the exposure of seafloor, and the colonization or reemergence of life all feed back into chemistry, sunlight absorption, and carbon cycles. Third lesson: if microbes survive under kilometers of ice, or beneath floating ice shelves, or in lakes sealed off for eons, then places like Jupiter's moon Europa, Saturn's moon Enceladus, or even Mars, in icy past or present, become more plausible sites for life. Antarctica is one of Earth's best natural laboratories for astrobiology. And the final lesson? It's in biodiversity and ecological forecasting. Newly exposed seafloor after ice calving reveals life that had been in stasis, or at least in hiding. These ecosystems may have existed without much change for decades, maybe centuries. As ice shelves retreat, new surfaces become available. Species colonize. How fast? In what order? Which species dominate? These changes will tell us a lot about competition and ecological shifts in a warming world. If there's one thing we can say about the discoveries beneath Antarctica, it's that they're thrilling, but they also open doors to deeper mysteries. So, is Antarctica really just ice, or the stage for one of the greatest mysteries on Earth? You decide. Tell us in the comments. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.